Hi, my name is Glenn Young and with Miyar Adventures, and we're today going to talk about how to pack a backpack. There are a lot of different sort of mnemonics that people use or different ways of remembering how to pack a pack, and using the alphabet is a really common way. And the way that I like to do it, which is not specific to all of Miyar, but just sort of my own style here as a guide, is also to use an alphabet system, but it's a little different than what you might have seen before. So here we go all the way to F, and I use this in order to organize different piles. A is accessible items. So these are items I want to be able to get to easily within my backpack, so they're not going to be underneath big bulky items like my sleeping bag. Then I'm going to have big stuff. This is useful as a pile because a lot of times big stuff weighs more, takes up more room, and you want to be able to pack around it or put it in a particular location in your pack. Then compressibles, these are things you can pack around the big stuff. Day clothing, those are the things that you're going to wear during the day, so you actually don't want to pack them. You want them in a separate pile altogether that's never going to enter your backpack at all. Edges, so anything with edges like ice axes, pickets, trekking poles, you're going to want to keep those oftentimes on the outside of your backpack so that you're not cutting up your nice clothing and wares on the inside. And lastly, for later. Personally, I like to have a bag of maybe flip-flops or trail runners, a nice fresh shirt, something like that I can change into back at the trailhead so it gets left in the car. And I'm going to have that as a separate pile altogether and make sure that comes with me as well. So let's take a look at the very top here, see what I've done with my backpack. So here I have a 75-liter Black Diamond backpack. For most glacier mountaineering in the Pacific Northwest, you want a reasonably large pack. 65 liters or larger, and oftentimes closer to 80 liters is the way to go, depending on your personal frame. And keep in mind that if you have a size small backpack, even though it might say 75, it might actually be closer to a 65-liter pack. If you have a size large, it could be 75, it could even be an 80-liter pack, even though it says 75 on the outside. So the size matters. Personally, sometimes I will line this backpack with either a contractor bag or a gorilla sack, which is essentially a very, very heavy-duty trash bag. They usually cost between $1 and $2, so not particularly expensive, but that will waterproof your gear in the event that it's supposed to precipitate, whether it's heavy, wet snow or whether that's rain or freezing rain. It'll keep everything waterproof inside your pack. Whether I do this usually depends upon the weather forecast, but just for this demonstration, I'm going to show with the pack already lined. Okay? I'm going to look at these piles, so just to make sure you understand which pile is which here. On the left, I have the accessibles pile. So I'm going to want to be able to get to my water. I might need to refill it on the way up, so I don't have to carry as much from the beginning, and I can refill halfway up the climb. I have a pair of liner gloves. I have a toilet kit, some hand warmers, which I may not need accessible now, but certainly for summit day I might want those. I have a pair of Julbo sunglasses, headlamp, sunscreen, some snacks and lunch for the day. Make sure not all of it gets packed way down in your pack. And hat and sun protection right here. Next, moving on to the big stuff pile, I have tent, I have crampons, which are in a separate pouch. Crampons might go into edges if you happen not to have a really durable pouch that they're going into, but in this case I can pack them inside my pack. This inside here is my sleeping pad, and I have my helmet and a fuel canister. Luckily I don't have to carry the pot. My buddy's going to carry the pot on this one. And then compressibles. A lot of these things are compressible, like puffy jackets. I can squish that down easily. These gloves, these are my heavyweight gloves for higher up, especially on summit day or high elevation or at night. I might want those, don't need those. And other things aren't necessarily compressible, but they're just smaller items that I can use to pack around, a lot of it being food. So unlike other systems you might see where all the food goes into a single stuff sack, I find that you can actually make much better use of space by just dumping your food out in one pile and using it as compressible and stuffing it in and around. That's A, B, C. Coming down to D, this is what I'm going to wear during the day. So I've got a pair of soft shell pants, I've got a t-shirt, I have a pair of socks, I have gaiters because I'll actually be hiking up snow if I'm climbing something like Mount Rainier for the first day. I have my sun hat, and I have a bit of a warmer layer long sleeve there too. One item that I don't have here yet is my boots or my trail runners. My alpine boots I might decide to wear if they're really comfortable, or if I'm going to be starting on snow pretty soon. Otherwise, I might decide to use my trail runners and actually pack my boots as one of the B or big items inside the pack and just wear the trail runners up to camp and change into my alpine boots when I finally hit the snow. Whether you do that depends on where snow travel starts, your feet, and the condition of your feet. You might already have blisters from previous climbing, from trail running, from anything like that, and you might want something lighter and more comfortable on your feet at that time. Edges, I've got my ice axe. I'm just carrying a single picket today and a pair of trekking poles. Those are probably going to stay outside altogether because I'm going to be using them on the climb, but attaching them to the outside of my backpack ensures that I don't accidentally leave them behind. And then finally, for F, for later is a bag for when I get back. And inside, I have a comfy pair of shoes, I have a pair of shorts, I have an extra t-shirt, and I have a little bit of celebration for the end of the climb. Don't drink and drive. Okay, so let's talk about the actual packing process. So I like to start at the big pile and move back and forth between the big pile and the compressibles pile. Generally, I pack very last the accessibles pile because a lot of it goes into the lid of the pack, and I find once you put a bunch of gear into the lid of the pack, it becomes floppy and kind of gets in your way. And then I'll attach the items to the outside of the backpack, the edges section at the very, very end. Okay? And luckily, the order doesn't matter that much because none of this needs to be accessible. So I'm going to take a big item like my sleeping bag, put it in, all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to use compressibles and fill around it until there's absolutely no airspace whatsoever. So I can take some food and stuff it in there. I don't need to get to this until either I get into camp or even until the next day. I can use technical gear provided I'm not going to be doing any glacier travel on the way to camp. I can stuff all this technical gear in there. Even things like your bowl, you're not going to need until you get to camp, and you're going to unpack your backpack to access the tent and the stove, etc. anyway. Okay, so now it's time to go for another big item. Tent poles I find work best right up against the back frame of your backpack. And that way, if you're setting your pack down sideways hard, it's not going to fracture your tent poles, which are a really important item. They're close to that backpack frame, which is going to protect them. So you notice, even though my pack seems to be filled with here, anytime I take a compressible, I can push it down on the side of the pack to take up some of that volume. I've just packed my rain gear inside. Whether you pack your rain gear inside the pack or as an accessible item depends on what the weather forecast is and how confident you are in that forecast. In this case, the forecast is good for 2 days, so I'm going to pack it a little bit further down in my pack, and later in the trip when the forecast starts to change, I'm going to keep that more in the accessible pile when I repack. Okay, now we're getting right to the top of the pack. The items that are right on top are relatively accessible. So now I still have some room, so I can think about which of these items I can put just inside. And I can put my helmet on top as sort of a cap. In this case, I'm going to take my medical kit, and I'm going to take this water bladder, and make sure, remember when you're packing your backpack, if you want to be ready to go, make sure your water bladder is already filled with water. So this already has 3 liters in it, so it's ready to go. If I'm packing my pack, I don't want to have to mess around at the trailhead where there may or may not be water. Okay, now different backpacks are designed differently. This particular one is simply a tube with one external pocket, which is essentially the lid of the backpack. So in this case, I'm going to pack a lot of my food that I want accessible at the top here. If I had more external pockets, I might choose to put some more of the food in external pockets here, 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 or in a different place. In this case, I'm going to put them inside. Okay, and now if I fold this in on itself, it makes this backpack fairly water resistant. So even in heavy rain, the rain would have to pass through the lid of the pack and then seep its way inside this gorilla sack. Now keep in mind you want to exchange these out every now and then when they get small holes, but even with small holes it's difficult for water to get inside unless you're in a complete downpour. Okay, so now I can start filling up the lid of my backpack with the items that I want to keep accessible without having to open it up. Spoon isn't necessarily an item you need accessible, but I tend to lose it sometimes way down deep inside my pack. So I'm going to just keep that in here. Sunscreen, always necessary. Good spot right in there. Snack bars, actually, it's good to have them accessible in your backpack, but it's even better to have them accessible in your pants pocket for when you're hiking. Because maybe when you want to take a break to eat a snack is not when your buddies want to take a break to eat a snack. So it's nice for me, I like to take 2 of these and keep them in a different pile. I'll actually keep these in the day wear pile. What am I going to wear during the day? A pair of pants with a cargo pocket with 2 energy bars in it. Also a really good idea on summit day to always have something in your pocket. 2 reasons. To fuel yourself, but also to keep the energy bar from freezing, because you're not going to stop and heat anything up. Extra batteries. Some packs also have a zipper on the underside. In this case, I'm going to put the extra batteries there. You also notice I already have a map, and the map has been laminated. Okay. We only have one more pile to pack, which is the sharps, or the edges as I've called them on our board. Before we pack them, I'm going to cinch this backpack down and make sure it's as compact and tight as I can get it. So to do that, sometimes you can bounce it a little bit. Other times you just push it down on the top. You can see, even with all that gear that I put in there, I put an entire tent in there, I put stove goods in there, there's still a fair amount of room, which is great. I can cinch this down, make sure I use all the compression straps, and in order of operation, you should always compress using the top compression straps to get it down flat first before using the side ones, or sometimes you can get what I call banana pack. You constrict it on the sides, and then you constrict it on the top, and it'll bend a little bit. Kind of like that. So I'm going to compress it from the top first. Okay, now we're ready to compress it on the sides. But before we compress it on the sides, I'm going to want to attach my sharps. So this particular pack has a technical ice tool attachment system, but it also works for ice axes. This ice axe, you'll notice, has some tape on top. That tape is just keeping a small insulator in place. It keeps my hands a little bit warmer if I'm at higher elevation or on a peak in particularly cold conditions like Mount Rainier. Sometimes it's nice just to make sure you're balanced. So if you're putting a little bit more weight on one side of the pack, it's good to put a little bit of weight on the other side of the pack. So one shoulder or one leg isn't taking more of the weight all the time. And if you happen to be carrying a picket or something else that can slide out through these side compression straps, make sure to thread through a carabiner or clip through that carabiner, depending on what your compression straps look like, whether they have the ability to be threaded. That way you're not going to accidentally lose that picket. All right. Got my trekking poles, got my pack packed, I've got all the clothing out that I need. I have a spare ice axe for my friend. Wasn't supposed to go in that pile. And I have my extra day, or my gear for when I get back to the car. If you have any questions about packing your backpack, or you want to come out with Miyar Adventures, take a look at our website, miyaradventures.com. Thanks.